This should be the number one piece of news at the moment. As you know, Ursula von der Leyen has been to number 10. Why? Because our leader, our great leader, intends to give away our defence system, including the Secret Service. This is how ludicrous it is. Anyway, I've managed to get hold of a 5-point briefing that people from the military have prepared that was handed to Christopher Chope on GB News a couple of days ago. I've put it on my Twitter and Facebook pages. I'll just give you the breakdown. It's 5 points. You need to know about it because this is what's happening right now. As people are obsessing over things that will be fighting for a generation, which is the Islamification of Britain, what you've got to look at as the Britain that you're fighting for, that you're worried about losing, because that is going to get taken away from you because of stuff like this. This should be the focus. This government is the main focus. He's your worst enemy, the man that's in number 10, and this is why you need to pay attention to what's going on. Here's how the military have explained what's going on. He said, we know the following detail because the EU is saying them. UK ministers are not. So you're not getting told this by the British people who should be looking after our interests. Number 1, the government intends to conclude a security pact, defence and foreign policy with the EU, and the EU expects this to be announced on the 19th of May this year. Number 2, the EU ambassador to the UK, Pedro Serrano, has confirmed that the pact follows the same template as the agreement proposed by the EU in 2008, when the EU expected the UK to stay within the EU policy making on defence and foreign policy, but which was removed from the UK's exit arrangements in late 2019 due to its impact on UK decision making and its autonomy. So we removed it when we left, and what's happened now? They're reintroducing us back into the EU through the back door. The template requires the UK to conclude an association agreement with the EU on defence, which places the UK as a participating state in the European Defence Agency, the European Defence Fund and the EU Permanent Structured Cooperation. In turn, the EU expects the UK would be required to fulfil all of the so-called third state rules of non-EU participation. Currently, only Norway has the same arrangement as non-EU states under EU rules. Number 3, third state rules would see defence policy and foreign policy, even on such matters as Gibraltar and the Falklands, in any overseas territory. The UK's compliance will be enforced by the threat of trade restrictions because the Security Pact will become legally a part of the existing EU-UK Trade and Cooperation Agreement, the TCA. That is a threat to trade from the EU. Now, why can't we threaten trade with the EU by an embargo on imports if they don't stop the boats? I'm just throwing that in there. Why don't we tariff France? Why don't we have the balls to do it back? Point number 4, in addition to the UK committing to non-diverge from EU foreign and defence policy, the UK would also commit to participate in EU defence industrial programmes. UK participation would be subject to financial incentives from the EU, but these sums would not be greater than the financial sums the UK agrees to contribute to the EU programmes in advance. The UK would be incentivised towards greater EU participation via a promise of receiving back its own money. They have no money to give you back. An increase and enforceable UK participation in EU rules, funding and programmes would have repercussions for the UK's existing defence procurement partnerships and its freedom to choose the most useful outcomes. It would particularly have the implications of the UK's defence industrial partnership with the US, as well as the Australia and UK deals. Does that sound like it's any good to us? When you know how President Trump views the EU, he sees it as politically sclerotic. in debt up to its eyeballs, so much so that Ursula von der Leyen has reassured European people that they think it's a good idea to probably access your bank savings to help them fund hardware for possible wars. Oh, well, what could go wrong with that now they've spent all their own money? You've actually managed to save some and they're going to have a divvy up at that, but give you a good return on your money. But you'll never actually get the lump sum back. That doesn't sound like good banking or good business or good politics, does it? And we're aligning ourselves to this when we've got Trump sat here waiting to be best friends, which would be the best, most productive allegiance we could have. The EU do not have what it takes to be a superpower military, because Germany is not allowed to have anything other than a peacekeeping force until 2099, because Eisenhower made them sign a treaty because of repeated attempts to turn Germany into the whole of Europe. This man is bonkers, absolutely bonkers. But he's not bonkers if what you want is to be in the EU, is he? So why do we vote for Brexit? Because they've stopped us. And what have the Tories done about this? Because let's face it, it was Theresa May's enthusiasm for the PESCO agreement which has led to this. This is what really frustrates me. And anyway, I'll go on to point 5 before I start bloody nitpicking, because it winds me up. Point 5, the UK would also be expected to conclude a security of information agreements with the EU, where the EU's current expectations are already high in regard to timely sharing of high-level information and intelligence, as well as being upwardly gradualistic, commensurate with the UK's expected increased level of participation in EU policy as mandated by the third state rules. Such a ratcheting and enforceable level of information and intelligence openness from the UK to the EU could have implications for the UK's existing intelligence partnerships, especially with the US. I mean, why don't you just hit us with a big boot? This man is insane, in my view, just an opinion. He's just absolutely focused on dragging us back into what is effectively a communist organisation. There is no democracy in the EU. It's not just undemocratic, it's anti-democratic. It says so on a bloody big stone when you walk into the building. Now, unfortunately, the EU is run by third-rate politicians that didn't do very well in their own countries. So they end up controlling even more countries, like the bankers who commit crimes get promoted. It's that sort of place. And we're aligning ourselves more with it. So when I'm telling you all this, the reason I'm doing it in 3 parts, I've done the employment thing, now I'm doing the defence thing. This is us. We become eunuchs in our own country. If you can't defend your own country because someone else who doesn't live in it has a say in how you do it, you're not defending your country at all. You're giving your country away. The man is giving the country away. Now, obviously, Nigel Farage is preoccupied with the council elections till after May the 1st. But this is something that's focused on his radar, good and hard. And it's one of the reasons that whilst other personalities like Rupert and Ben are growing their position on social media to get you to follow them, like them, trust them, and eventually one day probably vote for them, you've got to look at what we're playing with here. And we're playing with fire. We're playing with fire because this man is already in number 10. You need a vehicle that's ready to roll. And it's very, very hard to set up a political party. Very hard indeed. And especially to do it as we currently are, which is attacking the councils by trying to get new faces in there. You take away the power base of the councils, you've got some control of the country, because a lot of legislation has been devolved to council level. I had to take a slurp of tea. I don't cut my videos because of any fancy editing. I do it because my dog's going to bark, Amazon's called at the door, or I'm dying for a slurp of tea. Always have a cup of tea on the go. Matches my scarf. The thing is, I know I go on a bit, but I am passionate about what I believe in our country and our people, and we deserve better than this. And whilst I do understand your fears where Islamification is concerned, I understand the fears about extremism, of course I do, but that battle is there. You can pick that battle up anytime you want. The battle now that we have is to make sure that Keir Starmer does not get another 4.5, 5 years, and to make sure we get as many people into the councils to knock Labour out of those seats. Because we've got to disembowel this organisation that's running the country. You saw what he did. Who were the first people he had in number 10? Bill Gates and Larry Fink. That tells you everything you need to know from a man who openly said in an interview with Emily Maitlis that he prefers to deal with Davos. Come on. And the front bench. It's like the thick table at school, isn't it? None of them's run their own business. They're clueless. They've come from institutionalised organisations. They are not critical thinkers. Ed Miliband, oh dear, he's my third video. I was doing 1 of 3. So the first one was the employment. This is the defence. The next video will be about Ed's plans and the way he's denied and lied about what's going on with gas. But I'm doing them in 3 sections, so if you want to flick back to them, you can, because it'll say this is about defence, this is about employment. Then it's there forever for you to flick back and have a look at, so you know where we stand with this government and why we're fighting and why we've got this opportunity to fight. We must use it because we're so powerful. We have got so much at our fingertips that we could use, and we don't utilise it, especially where MPs are concerned, where they've got small majorities, some in with 200 votes. You could easily nobble them if you just got down to a few emails. Imagine 1,000 people emailing that particular MP saying they're not happy with him. And always leave, whatever you email about, keep it short, keep it as short as you can. And don't forget to end with, I couldn't possibly vote for you or vote you back into office because of XYZ. You need to threaten them with the loss of their job. 1,000 emails to anyone, West Streeting even, because West Streeting's only got 540 votes majority and he's the bloody health minister. So this is why we are so important. We are a huge number of people. We could just talk other people into joining in the fight. This is a passive war, a cold war with our government. It doesn't really even need demonstrations on the streets. What it needs people within the government and within Parliament to be told that they're not going to get in next time. And we need to use reform as that tool to frighten them. They're not frightened of Rupert Lowe or Ben Habib because they're not even off the ground. That doesn't scare them. What scares these people? Nigel Farage, because his party's up and running. He's already in Parliament and he's going to nobble away at the council level. And that's what you need. You need something that makes them afraid that they could lose the seat to someone he brings forward. That's the battle.